All right, the crew of NASA's Artemis II mission is in flight. They're preparing for the first crewed flyby of the moon in over half of a century. We know all of the Apollo missions back in the 60s and 70s. They launched last night from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Joining us now to talk more about this historic moment is Dr. Joe Westlake. You are a heliophysics division director at NASA. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here to talk about our astronauts and the work that's going on Artemis II.
Okay, so the first leg of the trip seems to be, I wouldn't say the most fun part, but the most interesting, because they've launched, but my understanding is that they're still technically in the Earth's orbit. How does that process work, and what's that first leg like?
Yeah, so their first leg was actually to get them into a high altitude Earth orbit. So, obviously they boarded the capsule yesterday. Everything was nominal. Everything looked great. They worked a couple of issues on the pad, and then they got up into space. That launch into space was just beautiful, just gorgeous. Picture perfect launch off of the Cape here, and just spectacular. As they got up into low Earth orbit, they were then raised into a higher altitude orbit in order for them to do a couple of things to wring out the capsule, to understand some of the upper stage activities and whatnot. And then next up is doing that trans-lunar injection burn to actually get them out to the moon.
Very exciting. I also think it's so interesting. I've looked at a lot of research on this, but very, very structured, right? They sleep in shifts, and they just eat at specific times, and they work out for a specific reason so they don't lose bone density. So I think people don't understand how much work goes in, not just years, but decades into this research. One of the big things I think our viewers are always talking about is the impact from the sun, because while they're not going to the sun, they're closer than if you're on Earth like a normal human. So how does NASA do studies for that to make sure that they're staying safe, and kind of how does that work go in on the backside to get them ready for the mission?
Yeah, so now you're speaking my language. My job at NASA is to worry about the sun. In our heliophysics world, we're always worried about space weather. So the thing that concerns us the most is being able to see and predict potential radiation exposure, coronal mass ejections, flares, and other things that'll come from the sun. And so we always have an eye out for solar activity, for space weather, and other things as we go forward. Our satellites have been out there for years. We've been doing this over and over again from the NASA heliophysics crew, from the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center, and being able to give that sort of look ahead and understanding of the astronauts to keep them safe from any potential issues. As they get farther and farther out towards the moon, they're actually going out farther beyond the magnetosphere, beyond the Earth's sort of protective magnetic shield, per se, and that exposes them to some of the more risks of deep space travel. There's a lot of contingencies in place. The Orion capsule is well shielded. The crew is well protected from this, and they have contingencies in place in case we do see, a flare, or we see some coronal mass ejection or something.
Our chief meteorologist is a huge weather nerd, so our viewers know all about, the CMEs, and we'll get the chance to see the northern lights and all that good stuff. But on the subject of the sun, there is a solar eclipse that seems like it will be viewable for the astronauts. How does that work? Is it different than on Earth when you're out there? Can they see things we can't? How does that all play out?
Yeah, so the really cool thing is that they're going to be able to see an eclipse likely on both sides of the moon. So they'll see the sun set and the sun rise. Now, the difference is when we see a total solar eclipse on the Earth, you're in the spot in which the Earth and the moon are set up perfectly to see the entirety of the solar corona, the solar atmosphere. When they see the sun is significantly smaller in their field of view. And so they're just going to see sort of a part of the solar atmosphere as it goes beyond and behind the moon. I'm really interested to see in their eyes, in their perspectives, and the images and science that they get coming back from this. It's a very active time on the sun. As you know, we're in solar maximum. And so I expect them to see some things off of the atmosphere of the sun that'll hopefully tell us a little bit about what's going on off of the limb and some of the active regions as they rotate around on the sun.
It's so much more than just trying to get cool pictures of the moon. People need to know. With that being said about the sun, we have seasons. Of course, we're in spring here on Earth, but the sun has seasons too. And my understanding is that can influence what the astronauts see, what they experience, but also eventually, if we're trying to put humans on the moon at some point, it can also impact them as well. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so as you talked about the seasons or the way the sun changes over the years, the sun has basically an 11-year cycle in which it goes from a very active time where you see more and more sunspots to a very inactive or solar minimum time in which you see very few sunspots. Now, the sunspots are where we usually see activity come off the sun. That's where flares emerge from. That's where coronal mass ejections and other things emerge from. And it's caused because the sun is this giant ball of ionized gas, and it sort of twists itself up every 11 years into this, very energetic time period. And then, its magnetic field actually flips within that. And so every time that it twists itself up and then it rotates, it creates this solar minimum, solar maximum. Now, we just came off of the solar maximum about a year ago. We're sort of in the declining phase now. So we're seeing fewer and fewer sunspots, but that declining phase is going to take us many years to get out of. And if we're going to have this long-term permanent base presence on the moon, we're going to need to be able to deal with, manage, forecast, and understand the space weather before it gets to us. That's our next job. That's what we're working on in heliophysics.
So cool. I mean, it's hard enough to forecast the weather on the Earth. I can't even imagine trying to do it.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
So my last question is a little bit rogue, but I want to know what your personal thing is that you're most excited for. It could be photos, it could be the science, it could be maybe one of each. I just want to know what you're most excited for.
I am most excited to hear the experience from 4 new people going to the far side of the moon, to just hear in their words what it is like. I think, over and over again, we launched a multitude of things from heliophysics into space last year. We had 6 launches across our fleet, all of them robotic missions to understand a multitude of different science topics. And the emotion that came from those launches was amazing. It was something that really filled my heart with joy. But seeing and hearing from 4 humans on board, it was just even that much more. And then over and over again, just hearing the experiences, hearing their ideas, hearing them as they go forward, and then hearing like the personal touches that come from each one. I remember hearing the last words from the crew before they launched, the note from the commander of full send, right? I mean, it's a different generation. It's a different perspective. And I can't wait to hear and see it.
And it's such a unique perspective. I actually interviewed Dr. Charlie Duke on the 50th anniversary of Apollo, was that 16 that he was on, back in 2022. And it's just like such a small, unique experience that so few people never get to experience. And so that's really cool. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Westlake, for being here. We're looking forward to everything going smoothly, hopefully tonight, as they are able to get out of the Earth's atmosphere, and we'll be looking forward to what they learn and tell us at the end of the 10-day orbit. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, super excited. Make sure to follow along at nasa.gov, and just excited that everybody is watching along, and good luck and Godspeed, Artemis II.
Yeah, and of course, nasa.gov, all the information's there. We'll also have continuing coverage on WCNC Plus and WCNC Charlotte. Hope everybody has a great day.
All right, what a great interview. It's great to have that type of experience and expertise while this mission is ongoing. In fact, this crew, they become the first humans to see a full crescent Earth since 1972, and they actually saw that a little bit earlier. So some cool things that are happening, historic type of things that a lot of folks will remember. Today is all about orbiting maneuvers and whether or not they will be approaching potentially the moon today. So we're going to bring in Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich, who did an amazing job yesterday with WKYC's Betsy on hours of coverage. You guys watching this from start to finish through the checks, through the initial launch. And as I said, they're getting some amazing views, and thanks to NASA, because the technology, as you guys alluded to all day yesterday, has just been striking. So talk about what is really up for today, what they'll be doing, the crew themselves. The toilet is fixed, so that's good news. There's only one. I was saying earlier, it's in the floor of the vehicle. But they wouldn't know it, obviously, when you're in weightless space. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah, they got to climb down in there. It's like a little compartment.
Right.
They got that fixed, which is good news. Now, what's interesting is the Orion spacecraft, which is actually the capsule they're in. They've got this little service module attached to it with the solar panels.
Yeah.
It's still in high Earth orbit, but it's getting closer right now. So I got this great animation, and if you want to follow along, NASA's doing this great website. It's called their Aero page. And so this is a real-time simulation of all the telemetry and what's happening in real time. And the cool thing is it overlays their path. So right now you can see where Orion is. It's in this high orbit. Earlier today, that picture you saw like around 7 a.m., that's when it was at its furthest distance from the Earth. That's why the Earth looks so small. It was like 45,000 miles away. That was the first time we'd seen that kind of crescent shape. But what's going to happen is this is going to follow this path here. And tonight, roughly around 7:50ish, it's going to be 24 hours into the mission. It's this spot right here, Colin, and I'll highlight it. This is what's called the trans-lunar ejection burn. It's like a 6-second burn of the engine that will send it on its trajectory towards the moon. So tonight's a big night because this is actually the last little push that the engine will give it towards the moon. Remember, in space, you remember an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force. Well, in outer space, there's no gravity, there's no friction, there's none of that. So once it does that 6-minute burn, it will maintain that speed until it uses the engines to slow down. So this will take it over the next 4 days to the lunar surface. And what's cool about this animation, you could see out in the distance there, it might be hard to see on wherever distance you're watching, but that's the orbit of the moon around the Earth. The moon isn't there yet. It's actually way over here. So it's moving from right to left along that orbit. And the plan is to sync up as it's coming through that orbit. So if you notice, we are in a full moon. It might have been like something people didn't notice. The launch windows were all situated around the full lunar cycle. So they had to do these launches within a few days of the full moon so that they had this opportunity to approach from here. But you can see down at the bottom, the mileage, it's down to where it's pretty when far Artemis away still. lifted from 30,000 miles, but earlier today it was 45,000. So they're technically getting closer to the Earth. And actually, if it wasn't daylight when it was passing over us, some of us could actually see the capsule, just like we watched the space station fly by.
That's cool.
It'll go around the other side of the Earth and then take that kind of slingshot effect. It has to burn for 6 minutes, Colin, to escape the gravity of the Earth, and then it'll head towards the moon and do that flyby. And that'll be the cool thing, because those are the pictures, as you mentioned. This is where humans haven't been since 1972. So this is the first time we've been this far away from the Earth since then. And that's a long time ago.
Well, it's crazy to think that the moon is more than 60,000 miles away, too, right? People think it's much closer, and that it would take, shorter, I guess. It's a 10-day flight. So, and I've seen on social media, and I think this goes back to meeting the moon in orbit. People are like, well, why don't they just go straight out? And that doesn't make any sense, though, in terms of the way that the moon is orbiting, right?
Yeah, everything's moving. These are all moving objects. The Earth's moving, they're moving. So this is where the math comes in. All this, trigonometry to kind of line up everything so that you're hitting it at the right times. The other thing is, they could throw that engine and burn it forever. They'd use all their fuel, but they'd be going so fast, then they'd have to use just as much fuel to slow down. So this is all calculated to make it the smoothest flight possible out to the moon. Now, I think we watch a lot of science fiction. We got warp drives and stuff, and we're just going to go straight out
Interstellar.
Yeah, that's not the way this actually works. And the other question I got a lot today, Colin, was people are like, well, why are we doing this, all these tests? Why are we doing this? This is all new equipment. We're not using Apollo technology. None of this stuff has ever been used before. So just like the Apollo missions, remember, the first Apollo missions, they didn't land on the moon either. They did test flights.
Step by step.
They went out there, they set up the lander, they set up the deorbiter, because remember, they got to put spacecraft in orbit around the moon that they can take to land, because then they have to come back up and then escape. So all this stuff has to be set up ahead of time, and because this is all brand new, it's 2026 technology, it all has to be tested, and many things that are happening right now are happening literally for the first time.
So the trajectory, speaking of equations and trigonometry, their planned trajectory will be to re-enter Earth, and then they'll go back to the Pacific Ocean, over the coast of San Diego. Now that's where they hopefully will be splashing down. Sometimes it moves, right, and shifts depending on the curvature of the Earth and where the Earth is at the moment when they come back. Talk about what folks will be able to see maybe here in Charlotte. It seems like it's way too west for anything that we'll see.
Yeah, I've been looking carefully at the orbits,
Okay.
and a lot of the initial orbits have been closer to the equatorial areas. So, even if they were to pass overhead, it's so far south we can't see it. Now, if you do have a telescope, there's a good chance. I looked tonight because there's a chance tonight that we might be able to see it close to the moon because we'll be looking towards the moon. It's kind of hard to tell from the planet here, but the North America is right there in the foreground. So the moon would be there. So when it's making this cross back, it would actually look like it's close to the moon. It's not. It's kind of it's deceiving because it's in the foreground and the moon would be off in the distance. But there is a chance tonight. I think it's around 8:50 or so. I'll have to look back because I was trying to plot it today. A couple astronomers have been trying to calculate the positions in a couple pieces of software I use to kind of align it up. But there might be a chance you could see it there. Now, when it gets close to the moon, it's going to be really hard to see because it's going to be a tiny little speck compared to the moon. Now, if you have high-powered telescopes, obviously NASA is going to be tracking it. We would not be able to see it with the naked eye. We're going to have to watch the feeds. And by the way, NASA's doing a really good job. They've got several YouTube channels going, streaming updates continuously. This website is amazing because you can watch this stuff in real time. The cool thing is, Colin, you can click on the mission view and it zooms in and shows you actually the orientation right now, and you can see kind of the solar panels out there, and they're facing the sun. That's why the shadow is there. And so the shot we had today was kind of that crescent shape off in the distance. That was taken, I think, from a camera on one of the solar arrays looking back in this direction. So it's pretty cool. So the kids would love to play with this. You can kind of zoom in and pan and tilt and then look at the mission. And then along the mission way, you can click on the little dots. It'll show you these burns that they have to go through to slow down and stuff. So
it's cool.
Really interactive and kind of shows you how the whole mission is going to go. You can even look at their menu, which is kind of cool. They've got all this great food. It does not look like space food. You and I remember as kids,
I tried it down at space camp. It was not good.
Freeze-dried stuff like MREs. They've got legit food.
I didn't do well.
Yeah, tons of coffee and stuff. So that technology. The other cool thing, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, all the astronauts were able to bring their iPhones. It's the first time that they've allowed smartphones to go into space.
Interesting.
So I've been getting questions like, why are these pictures so good? And why is this? Well, they're literally using their iPhone and shooting it out the window in some cases and sending images back.
Speaking of technology, Brad, I'm listening right now to the NASA comms and the commentation or the commentary that's coming out of Houston. We just learned that when the crew woke up, they listened to Green Light by John Legend.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Well, I was going to say, when you were speaking, and I didn't mean to interrupt there, you could see the shift change of Capcom. The captain of the communications, maybe, there inside the NASA, nerve brain center, I guess you can call it. So interesting that, they obviously have to take shifts. People are always working, watching this. People would think that maybe these folks get a break. They do, right? But other folks come back in to replace them as well. So it's interesting. And it seems like, at this moment, I've been seeing a lot of questions in terms of, are they flying this thing manually? In some respects they are, right? There are other systems that will help navigate. But I think at this moment it's more resting, kind of waiting for, the initial burn, as you said tonight, and seeing where things have gone. I mean, there have been other burns that have gone on throughout the day as well. But this is the biggest one that'll happen tonight, right?
Yeah, so they had several burns earlier when they had a bigger module attached. And that was to get them into that high Earth orbit, to slingshot them around. Now they have the smaller engine, which is basically the service module. It's a small part. That's where the solar panels are attached. There's a smaller engine on there, and this is the big burn that's coming up. You mentioned control and the communication. It's really important. That's manned 24/7 because they're monitoring things all the time. The other thing, there is a lot of autonomy here. They could technically have the computers fly this whole thing. But because there's crew on there, they actually a couple times in the mission, they're going to allow them to manually try things out in case, let's say, the systems fail. And they have to. So this is like a fail-safe. So they're going to train on piloting it manually at times just to make sure they can do that, because if the computers go down or communication fails, they're there. That's the great thing about having a crew on there, a bunch of people, because as great as the technology is, it's a backup because they could be there to reboot things, troubleshoot, and also steer it if they have to. But they can literally put this thing on autopilot. That was like Artemis I. It was all autonomous, and they had nothing no human was really on board doing anything.
Yeah.
The problem with that is if something happens on board, there's nobody there to fix it.
Right.
Now we do. We've got 4 astronauts that can fix things and repair them really quickly.
Well, and I think people need to put in perspective training for 2 years
Yeah.
for 10 days,
Yeah.
right? So if anything goes wrong, right, there were so many differentiations in terms of caveats they throw at these astronauts. And obviously we met the other backups, right, in case
Yeah.
some of those astronauts couldn't go.
Yeah.
So there are so many background contingency plans that are in action. It really just blows my mind that NASA really thinks of everything.
Oh, absolutely.
It was interesting. Talk to me about this, if you would. I was seeing the compare and contrast, and it's tough to do this. Technology is
Yeah.
much different, and the missions are much different. This is more complex than maybe a SpaceX mission. But
Yeah.
they were looking at the SpaceX capsule and the capsule that Artemis II has,
Yeah.
just how intricate it is. But I mean, the missions are just so different. And not only that, the rockets and technology are much
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the SpaceX has their Falcon 9, which has been their workhorse. That's where they
Yeah.
launch all the satellites. That's only to get basically satellites into orbit.
Okay.
It can take the Dragon capsule.
The Dragon capsule.
They'll get people up to the space station back and forth.
Right.
That's a very good platform. But because this is such a high orbit and because they needed so much fuel to do these other burns,
Yeah.
they couldn't put this on a Falcon 9. They would have to use one of the larger rockets. That's why the Starship's being developed by SpaceX. That's what they hope to take to the moon and beyond, maybe to Mars.
Yeah.
That's a massive rocket, just like the SLS is with this one. This
Right.
was a huge rocket. They needed that lift to get it into that higher orbit. Also, in future missions, they're going to be putting landers and other equipment. They need to transport way more equipment. So the payloads will get bigger over time
Okay.
as they take more stuff up there. Because eventually, they're going to build a moon
base,
base.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Blue Origin's going to be involved in this, and SpaceX. So it'll be all their partners, all these private sectors. They're working on landers and other things that are coming next year and the year after. So this will be a collaborative effort among all of these agencies coming together to get this moon base built. Maybe even put a factory there where they're going to produce fuel on the moon.
Wow.
And the next step, and this is what people don't really think about. We're thinking about the moon. Mars is actually the destination of all this.
Right.
Because
The moon's just a stopover.
Yeah, we want the moon to be like the rest stop, the place
Right.
where we're going to stop.
Buc-ee's, right?
Yeah, refuel. Yeah, go in there,
Maybe not Buc-ee's.
rest up, and then go to the Mars. And Mars is really like the transformational thing of our lifetimes, and our kids' lifetimes for sure. This will be
man.
their Apollo missions, if
Yeah.
you will, because we'll be going to Mars, and somebody is going to eventually, I think, in our lifetimes for sure, is going to be landing on the red planet.
You know, my dad got a chance to fly T-38s in the Air Force, and never got a chance to even think about potentially being an astronaut. I talked about going to Huntsville, going to space camp as well. That was kind of as a boy, as a teenager, and went through some of the programs, went to the underwater type of module that they went, tried to escape, some of the gyro scope that they have there. Forget the exact name of it, but I mean, just the training. I was kind of looking back through some of the videos, and Nat Geo has done a great job. For anybody that wants to go back and kind of look at the training over the last 2 years, and they've done a really good job of compartmentalizing part of these. It's just so much training, and I guess what I'm looking for is to hear them when they get back on the ground, their perspective of not just the Earth, but of the moon as well, right? I'm really looking forward to hearing from them.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that it will change them tremendously, because they're going to see the Earth. They've already seen like the pictures today. That's, the Earth looked tiny, right? It starts putting in perspective, like even like some of the astronauts, like who was it? Dr. Cook was up there. She's been in the space station, but that's like in a 200,000 miles up there, or 200,000 feet above the Earth. It's closer to the planet, so the Earth still looks big, right?
Right.
You're getting to these farther distances, 45,000 miles. Eventually, on the other side, they're going to go 8,000 miles past the moon. The Earth is going to look tiny. It's going to look like they're in the universe, right? It's going to give them perspective that I don't think any human normally has, because you don't get to see the Earth in that kind of view. And I think it will change them dramatically, at least put things in perspective for them. And the human element, that's a big part of this mission. Like, how this is going to impact them mentally, physically. There's a lot of things we're going to learn from it. And I think that's the thing I'm looking forward to, is like their perspective, their pictures, the stories they're going to tell of like what they saw and thought when they got to that far side of the moon, because nobody's ever been there. We can say, hey, they're not landing this time, but they're also going farther into space than any human ever has. That's why this mission is so historic. I think a lot of folks, when they heard, oh, they're just doing a flyby, this is just like Apollo. No, they're going farther
Nobody's
than
ever-
Apollo.
right.
So in many ways, this is as historic as landing on the moon because we've never been this far out.
Right. That's so cool to think about. Well, Brad, we could talk about it for the entire hour. I know you have to get your forecast ready, and we'll have more time to talk about it. Obviously, you'll be going through things on weather impact tonight at 6:30. So
6:30, yep.
thank you for your time, sir.
Yep.